In Section 2, you learned that the offspring of a sexually reproducing species are not genetically identical to their parents. If they were identical, there would be little variation among the members of a species. However, these offspring do resemble their parents because particular characteristics have passed on from generation to generation. People have taken advantage of this transmission of genetic information between parents and offspring to produce many breeds of domestic plants and animals. However, unlike breeding programs to help save the Bengal tiger, the breeding of a purebred dog was not intended to promote variation. But many different breeds of dogs were developed that had specific desired characteristics. This has made Canis familiaris one of the most physically varied species on Earth. Why do the puppies of a Chihuahua dog turn out to be Chihuahuas? Why don't they turn out looking like Dalmatians instead? The reason is that the Chihuahua parents pass on a blueprint to their offspring, so that each puppy receives a complete set of instructions for making a Chihuahua dog. Every multicellular organism on Earth contains a blueprint for making a copy of itself in each of its body cells. Imagine how much information must be in those blueprints, and how many different blueprints there are. For example, a parrot's blueprint must describe how to make all its different colored feathers, its specially designed beak, and its remarkable voice. The blueprint for a spruce tree must have instructions for making the straight, slim needles, the sticky, perfumed resin, and the thick, tall trunk. What could store so much information and pass it on from generation to generation? Canadian scientist Oswald Avery helped to answer this question when he proposed that a large molecule first found in cells' nuclei is responsible for storing such information and passing it on. This molecule, deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA for short, is the inherited material responsible for variation. All living organisms contain DNA in their cells. When the cells of the organism, such as the cells of mammals and plants, contain a nucleus, DNA is found in the nucleus. DNA was first identified in 1869, but little was known about the structure of the molecule or its role in heredity. After analyzing cells of many different organisms, ranging from bacteria to plants and animals, scientists found DNA in all of them. In 1944, Avery confirmed that DNA was the material of inheritance, and this posed a new question. How could the blueprints for so many different organisms be passed on by what seemed to be exactly the same molecule? Solving this puzzle was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the last century, and involved two scientists whose names became known worldwide: James Watson and Francis Crick. By unraveling the structure of DNA, Watson and Crick revealed how the same chemical building blocks could carry such a wide range of instructions needed for the diversity we observe in the living world. The DNA molecule can be compared to a ladder that has been twisted into a continuous spiral. The uprights of the twisted molecular ladder are identical all along its length. However, the rungs vary in composition. Each individual rung pairs up just two of the following four chemicals: guanine, cytosine, adenine, and thymine, or G, C, A, and T for short. The arrangements of these four chemicals, G, C, A, and T, forms a code that cells can read. You know that the 26 letters in our alphabet can be rearranged to form millions of words that we read. Similarly, the genetic code is based on arranging the four chemical letters into words, or instructions, that that describe how to make any particular organism. In other words, all the blueprints for all the species in Earth are written in the same language. DNA contains all the instructions for an organism's characteristic features. Because every organism has so many physical and chemical characteristics, there is a lot of DNA in a cell. If the DNA from a typical human body cell was stretched out, it would be 2 meters long, more than 1 million times longer than the cell it came from. To fit such a large amount of DNA into their cells, organisms arrange their DNA into packages. These packages are called chromosomes. In organisms such as plants and animals, the chromosomes are located inside the cell nucleus. Each human cell nucleus, for example, contains 46 chromosomes. You could think of one chromosome as a single volume of an encyclopedia, and the set of chromosomes as the complete encyclopedia. If you were missing a single volume of an encyclopedia, you could be missing information you might need sometime in the future. This is also true for our chromosomes. One chromosome contains only part of the instructions for making a human. All of our nuclei, except for those in the gametes, must have a complete set of chromosomes. For humans, a complete set has 46 chromosomes. For dogs, however, a complete set has 78 chromosomes. And for cats, the number is 38. In most familiar organisms, the chromosomes are organized into pairs. So the body cells of a human contains 23 pairs of chromosomes, while a dog's body cells contain 39 pairs, and a cat's body cells contain 19 pairs. These examples show that chromosome number varies from one species to another. It is important to realize that the composition of the chromosomes varies as well. For example, the eyes of a typical dog have round pupils, while the eyes of a typical cat have slit-shaped pupils. So the dog's chromosomes must contain genetic code that reads, "Make round pupil." The cat's chromosomes must contain a different genetic code, one that reads, "Make slit-shaped pupil." Such differences are the source of diversity from one species to another. Current scientific thinking is that genes are responsible for the inheritance of an organism's characteristic features. A single gene is an uninterrupted segment of DNA, which contains coded instructions. Much of the early research into genes was carried out on the fruit fly. Researchers found that genes are located in the chromosomes. Each chromosome contains numerous gene locations. Like chromosomes, genes come in pairs. Both genes in a pair carry DNA instructions for the same thing. Leg length in the fruit fly is an example. In the fruit fly, the 2 leg length genes occupy matching locations on the 2 chromosomes. The DNA code may not be exactly the same in both locations. Offspring inherit genes from both parents. For example, a fruit fly inherits 1 gene for leg length from its mother and 1 from its father. However, the leg length gene exists in 2 possible forms: short leg or long leg. The wing-shaped gene also exists in 2 possible forms: long or dumpy. So the 2 genes in a particular pair may not be identical. Much of what scientists have learned about inheritance in fruit flies can be applied to most other organisms, including humans. In fact, most genes in most species exist in an array of possible forms that differ as to their exact DNA sequence. These possible forms are known as alleles. To understand how chromosomes, genes, and alleles are linked to inherited characteristics, think about dogs. All dogs belong to the same species, and all ordinary, healthy dogs have a hairy coat. So we could begin by thinking of hairy coat as an example of an inherited characteristic. But when we observe dogs, we see many different versions of hairy coat. The hair may be straight or curly, short or long, coarse or fine, and the alternative versions of coat color are almost too numerous to count. Observing this variation, we can make 3 inferences. First, hairy coat is almost certainly more than just a single characteristic. It must involve a combination of several characteristics. Second, more than one gene pair may be involved in determining the individual details of a dog's hairy coat. For example, there could be one gene pair for hair length, a second gene pair for waviness, and another gene pair for texture. Third, there may be several possible alleles for each gene pair. For coat color alone, there must be 10 or more possible alleles, all in just one species.